Hopefully, you guys are aware that today we're going to be hearing from and talking to Tom, who runs a website. Actually, let me find that website real quick and put that up on the in the chat box. So if you wanted to follow along at your own pace, you can. Whoa, that came out really long. I don't know why, but it's in the chat box. There's a link that'll get you to Tom's Carnivores. And that's a website that I stumbled upon doing research and homework and looking up plant stuff. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. There's all kinds of goodies on there. And then more recently, in one of the many Facebook groups, somebody shared an interactive tool that he had just published. And I tried it for myself, and the stinking thing actually worked. And so I thought, wow, this is magic, this is sorcery. And that was quite a few months ago. And so since then I reached out to Tom, and with the hope that he would respond, and he did. And so he's joining us today to kind of go over his website. He's going to give us a quick tour of some of the things he's done and he's working on. And then we will do kind of an informal discussion slash interview type thing towards the end. So without further ado, Tom, I have made you a co-host, so if you wanted to start sharing your screen from your end, you are welcome to do so, sir.
Brilliant, I will do. Yeah, first of all, thanks so much for inviting me on. I'll hopefully have some interesting stuff to share with you guys. But yeah, I thought first of all, it might be good to just run through my website and give you a little bit of background on it, how it started and some of the tools I've built. And then, yeah, as John said afterwards, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. But yeah, I'll get started. So hopefully everyone can see that. I'll assume you can, but yeah. So at the moment, yeah, Tom's Carnivores is my blog. Well, Carnivores Plants, interview lots of other nurseries and what have you. But it really started out as something very different, and this was many years ago now, when I had a very small collection of carnivorous plants, and I was growing in a terrarium in a small flat. So I had very limited grow space, and what I did was build a terrarium controller out of a Raspberry Pi. And it was a really interesting journey doing this. It was essentially like a really basic automation, just like monitoring temperature, humidity, and so on, and then turning fans on and off, that kind of thing. And I had such fun building this thing in my flat that I wrote this guide for how to do it. And it's, yeah, really sort of in-depth nerdy stuff. It's, you know, assembling it from the Raspberry Pi, how to attach the sensors, how to program it, and so on. And when I put this on my blog at the time, it did surprisingly well. A lot of people seemed to find it useful, even people outside of the carnivorous plant community. So yeah, that was a good start. But unsurprisingly, and I'm sure everyone here can sympathize with this, I ran out of space in my terrarium very quickly. I thought, right, I've got to build a bigger one. So I did. And the next question was what Nepenthes would actually survive in my conditions, because it was quite a warm terrarium. It wasn't brilliant for Highlanders. So I really struggled to find a resource online that would kind of translate the altitude of a Nepenthes, or where it grows in habitat, into a kind of a rough guide of temperature. So I built this tool, and this was really the start of the website. This one, this is. I called it the Nepenthes calculator. Essentially, what you do is you put in a species you're interested in. So let's just say, Nepenthes lowii. Let's type that in there. My keyboard has stopped working. No idea why. Tell you what we'll do. Just copy it from somewhere else. Here we are. Let's put in. You put in a species like Nepenthes veitchii, for example, into the calculator, and what it will do is basically tell you where it's known to grow. So along the bottom here, you have the elevation or the altitude. I'll put it in Fahrenheit because I know you guys are Americans, and it'll tell you roughly the daytime and nighttime temperatures you can expect in that habitat. So you know if the plant's likely to survive in your conditions. And then another feature that I added soon afterwards. Again, I'm going to have to Here we go, my keyboard's working again. Let's say you cross that with Lowii, so Veitchii cross Lowii, it essentially takes the altitudinal distribution of the parent plants, and it will give you a very rough idea of what the hybrid offspring are likely to survive in. And again, it is all quite rudimentary, but again, as someone who at the time I really wasn't that experienced with Nepenthes, I didn't know what would survive. I built this for myself, so I knew what would grow in my terrarium, and it worked fairly well in my experience. And I've added features to it over the years, like now it will, when you put in the 2 species you're interested in, it will show you photos of them in situ, in the wild. These are all contributed by growers other than myself, very kind of them. You can see Francois in France has kindly contributed this picture of Nepenthes Lowii. Laurent in Belgium has contributed one of Veitchii, and so on. So I built this, and I didn't really expect it to take off the way it did, but fairly soon afterwards, I heard from Rob Cantley at Borneo Exotics, and also Peter D'Amato at California Carnivores, and also some of the horticulturalists at Kew Gardens here in the UK. They got in touch with me, which was amazing. You know, as someone who's grown carnivorous plants since I was about 6 years old, hearing from Rob Cantley and Peter D'Amato was absolutely incredible. So they gave me some tips on how to improve it, which I did, and from there, I think the next thing I really did was start creating maps for various other genus. So, for example, Sarracenia, I had great fun making this one. Again, I'll admit I haven't kept this completely up to date, but you select one of the various species of Sarracenia, and it will tell you which counties you can find it in the States, which was quite good fun to build as well, this one. So you can see Leucophylla there, down in southern Florida and so on. So yeah, this was the next one I made. And yeah, really after that, once I'd made these, I had quite a few people asking, if I had any other tools in the works, what I was going to do next. And as my collection was taking off, instead I kind of focused on the blog. And this is really where my attention's been ever since, to be honest. So I publish all sorts of things on here, fairly intermittently, I'll admit, but I've been lucky enough to visit quite a few nurseries, mostly in Europe and in the UK over the years. I've also done, throughout COVID in particular, a few kind of remote showcases of collections for various growers here in the UK. Let's find a good example. So I've been to visit Chris Klein in Germany a few times. He's a fantastic guy with an amazing collection of plants. So I got to spend ages in his greenhouse taking photos of all of his incredible specimens. And yeah, I try to make a point whenever I'm doing one of these of, as well as putting up lots of nice photos, just trying to ask them, about why they're in the hobby, what do they enjoy, what their favorite species are, what keeps them in the hobby, as well as getting as much, as many growing tips as I can, as much for myself as for everyone else who reads the blog. So I've done these now with quite a few growers. I visited Chester Zoo here in the UK. Particularly if you're into your Nepenthes, I'd recommend having a look at that post, because Chester Zoo have an absolutely incredible collection of Nepenthes, which aren't on public display. So I was, again, lucky enough to go and have a look around their glass houses, and I took as many photos and asked as many questions as I could, so that other people could get to see those plants too. Who else have I been to see? I went to see Matthew Soper, Hampshire Carnivores Plants, runs an absolutely incredible nursery here in the UK. I've been to see his nursery a few times. I visited the late Andy Smith, who was a very well-known and well-respected grower of carnivorous plants here in the UK, who sadly passed away last year. But he was, again, incredibly gracious. He showed me around his fantastic collection, and I published a few photos of my my trip to see him as well. And as again, I mentioned, I did features with overseas nurseries as well. I've actually spoken to quite a few US nurseries. Didn't get to visit them, unfortunately. I would have loved to, but I spoke to Drew Martinez of Carnivoro, and I spoke to the guys at Native Exotics, it's Carnivore, and also Dom Gravine at Red Leaf Exotics. I've spoken to quite a few nursery owners and done, well, either Zoom calls or Skype calls where I kind of ask them about their story and their nursery, and then get lots of photos of their collections. And yeah, here's a piece I did with Drew at Carnivore, which was really great fun as well. Predatory plants, I've spoken to the guys there as well. That was really, really enjoyable. They shared lots of incredible pictures of their nursery too. And yeah, that was kind of my focus for quite a while. And I think the last thing I should really mention is while I was doing this, I was in the process of finding myself more growing space, because yeah, I'd really outgrown my terrariums by this point. The plants were vining out the roof, so I had to find a bigger space to grow. So when I moved house a couple of years ago, I managed to find somewhere with a garden for the first time in my adult life, which was really exciting. And I built a greenhouse. Now I'm by no means an expert on greenhouse growing, but I found that such an interesting journey building that greenhouse that I published a guide to, well, basically what I wish I had known when I started my greenhouse. So this is more of a kind of technical guide. Like I outline essentially what I found particularly useful in terms of heating and humidity and water and lighting and so on. And I get quite a few messages from growers, mainly here in the UK, given that I think the climate, probably the advice in this guide is particularly applicable if you live, well, where I am, the winters are extremely cold. So, insulation is pretty important. Having fail safes for things like heating and what have you, that was very useful. But yeah, I hear from quite a few growers who found this guide particularly useful. So yeah, and then I think that was pretty much it that I wanted to mention, to be honest. I think my focus is at the moment, given COVID, I should say I did actually operate a little shop at one point, which was just like cuttings and seedlings from my own collection. I've visited Europe quite a lot, so I was able to bring back seedlings from Chris Klein's nursery and Thomas Schneider's nursery and sell those here in the UK. But given Brexit and coronavirus and the fact I became a dad very recently as well, my time was very limited, so I had to sadly shut my little shop. But instead of that, I've really been sort of doubling down on the blog. And fairly recently, I launched this tool, which I was pretty proud of, but I'll run through it now. I should say, first of all, I cannot take credit for the engineering that went into this tool. This was a US grower called Eric Wang, who wrote the machine learning model, which actually powers this. So this is the Nepenthes identifier. So by all means, please check it out. There's lots of caveats down here, which I suggest reading before you start trying to submit a really complex Exotica plants hybrid and expect it to be able to identify it. It won't. But if you upload a species photo, hopefully I've got one here to hand. That one will do. Let's go for that. So you crop your picture and you hit go. And basically what this does is uses AI essentially to, it's been trained on a model of hundreds of thousands of Nepenthes pictures, and it will try and identify it based on the features it can recognize in the image. So hopefully it will be able to identify this. Yes, there we go. So it will guess that it's Nepenthes hamata. And what I find really interesting about this is that its second and third guesses, you can kind of see where it's coming from, even though this is completely, it's a machine doing it. Clearly it's seen the fangs and it's thought, right, maybe it's, Edwardsiana. It's seen maybe the shape of the mouth, and you can see tentaculata in there. So just I spent hours playing with this thing once I built it, and yeah, I was really quite pleased with how it turned out. Even though, like I said, I can't take credit for the machine learning model that kind of underpins it. But yeah, it's good fun. It works on mobile as well, or it should. I did my best, so I'd recommend anyone who grows Nepenthes to try and test it on a few of your plants and see if it can get it right. Because yeah, I'd love to get your feedback as well. So yeah, by all means, please have a go at that. I think that was all I really wanted to mention. But yeah, like I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has about the site, or if there's if anyone's seen any features that they want to know more about, please just ask away.
There's a
think
species.
John.
Yeah, there's a species questions in the chat. I don't want to have to read that stuff. Gianna, I don't know if you want to unmute and ask it and attempt the pronunciation. But she had a question about the differences between 3 different species, if you happen to have any tips on separating those. I know you're not the AI, but
Hang on, let me open up the chat.
yeah.
Right. Okay. So good questions. Let's start here. The difference between truncata, Rocantlii, and nebularum. Well, it's funny you should say that. Yeah. That's one of the. Seem to remember that was one of the things I put in the blog post. I wouldn't expect this tool to be able to make any real meaningful contribution to the kind of debates around taxonomy of species complexes. In fact, one thing that's particularly interesting, when we were training this model, we actually had to lump together a load of species in the Nepenthes maxima complex, simply because there's so much kind of overlap between them that the AI really struggled to tell them apart. So that, there's a few that it's not really learned to pick up yet. And as for Rocantlii and nebularum, I advised it to steer clear of that. So
yeah, it was kind of a cheeky question. Sorry.
No, it's a good question. It's a good question. I wish I knew the answer myself. Does the identifier work for different stages of plant maturity? No, it doesn't. So the way that this AI has been trained is on a very large library of photos of mature Nepenthes pictures. So it will really struggle if you give it like a juvenile picture, because it's not really got any of those identifiable features that we use to recognize the species, and that also the AI uses as well. Can it differentiate between uppers and lowers? That's another really interesting question. I seem to remember that there are several species where the difference between upper and lower was so distinct that we actually categorized them as 2 groups. So as far as the AI is concerned, I think Nepenthes IMA lower and Nepenthes IMA upper are actually 2 different species because they're so distinct. So if you put in an upper pinch, one of those wine glass shaped upper pitches of Nepenthes IMA, it should actually return IMA upper. So we had to train it as if they were 2 different species. But I don't think, I should say we haven't trained it yet on all pitches like that, all species like that. But yeah.
So I've tried to. Oh, go ahead, Maggie.
Oh, I was just going to clarify. You said it kind of fast. I want to make sure I understood. Did you say that it won't be able to identify something very complex because the features won't be so evident?
That's correct. Yeah. So it won't even be able to identify simple hybrids. Right now it's been trained on species alone, and the challenge of training it to identify hybrids would be particularly interesting, I think, because given the difference, the variation in a single Grex, right? It would be very, very hard to train the AI to identify the difference between those. So yeah, right now it's species only, but I think it would be really good fun to try and train it to make a best guess. If you tell it it's a hybrid and it will try and guess the component species, that would be really interesting.
So I guess I could follow up. I've tried putting up kind of just simple hybrids through the guide, and it actually picked up the parentage pretty well in terms of percentage distribution. So 40% probably this, and then 50% probably that. So it did a little bit pick it up based on the features. Which
that's really, really good to know, and I find that fascinating. That's one of the things I love about Nepenthes is the possibilities for breeding and the fact that they're essentially all cross-fertile. The idea that an AI that really has no idea what it's looking at can still look at a hybrid and recognize the traits, the attributes that it's picked up from its parent species or its various parent species. So that's good to know.
Cool.
Okay.
Do you
And
have something else, Maggie?
just wondering, so you are just assuming that this is only for Nepenthes. You don't have any identifier for the other genuses yet?
I don't yet, sadly. I should say as well, my site is sadly become more and more biased towards Nepenthes, the more simply because they're my favorite genus. I'm obsessed with Nepenthes. I've got a very large collection of Nepenthes. I do grow some Drosera, some Sarracenia, and Venus flytraps and so on, but purely because I'm so focused on Nepenthes, more and more of what I've published, like species showcases, the showcases of other collections that I've done, they're primarily Nepenthes. But yeah, I think a Drosera identifier would be amazing.
Was there something you were looking for, Maggie?
Oh, well, you know, imagine trying to identify a flytrap cultivar. Would that be something? You always get these crazy Facebook. Can you please tell me what my flytrap is? And it's, you know, it's unlabeled. There's always these fights about, oh, well, if the label says nothing, then it's a typical. So there's always people wanting to know what they have in their hands because it has teeth or it has long cilia or has real pedioles or something. So I just thought, oh, wouldn't that be interesting if your identifier could actually tell us what the parentage it comes from as far as the flytraps are concerned. But okay, your genus, your favorite genus is Nepenthes. That's great. Fantastic.
Yeah. I that's one thing I'm interested in doing actually is as I continue to work on the blog, getting more contributions from people who specialize in other genuses. So I'd love to have more blog posts on Drosera and so on. I have as of quite recently been making a real effort to contact more people to contribute guest posts and that kind of thing. Just get experts on other topics to contribute to the blog, and if they have a blog themselves, you know, I'd love to reciprocate that kind of thing. Just because I mean, I should say now, like one of the reasons that I kind of started the blog was that a few years ago when I started it, I saw that there was a real move away from forums for discussion about carnivorous plants onto social media networks. So there were more and more groups on Facebook for, you know, discussion of various genuses. And I mean, personally, I'm not really a huge fan of that. I find that, you know, the information that as all of the expertise and the advice that gets poured into these Facebook groups, it's never in the most easily searchable format. The search function on Facebook is awful, as Jan said. I completely agree. You know, a few months after a post has been made, it's impossible to find it again. You know, they don't last forever, these social networks. And I think the old forums from sometimes 15, 20 years ago, many of them are still online and easily searchable, unlike the content in Facebook groups. So the recent move that I've noticed towards blogs, personal blogs, people, you know, just creating a simple website where they showcase their collection and put up growing tips and that kind of thing, I find that like a really positive step in the right direction. And yeah, I hope that's something that will continue, definitely. Should just have a quick look through the chat for any other questions.
Yeah, there was a question about for a new blog post interview, if you had who's your next target might be.
Oh yeah, good question. Wow, I've been like, I count myself very, very lucky so far. Like I've gotten to speak to some incredible growers, like here in the UK, some of the best known growers of Nepenthes. Simon Lum, for example, I've spoken to him. I've spoken to quite a few nursery owners in the States. But given a choice, if there was a nursery I could visit and do a feature on, I think the two that spring to mind would probably be Andreas Wistuber in Germany. I would absolutely love to see his collection and his new greenhouses, and just to do a feature on, you know, all of the incredible work that he's done, both taxonomically and for conservation, on Helianthora and Nepenthes and so on. But also in the States, I'd love to speak to Jeremiah Harris. I think that would be really cool as well. I was actually hoping last year to do a bit more traveling to meet other growers, and you know, I was planning to go to we have the European Exchange, EEE, which was going to be in Belgium in 2020. I was going to go there, hoping to meet lots of new growers, but obviously coronavirus happened, so sadly I didn't. But yeah, like I'm quite keen to keep the blog going, even if it's with remote, features done over Zoom or whatever. But yeah,
I'll do a shameless plug for our own society here. You mentioned Drew, you mentioned Jeremiah. Those have been previous meetings. They've been speakers at our previous meetings. So I'm actually going to take that opportunity to plug our YouTube channel, because those meetings are posted. So if you go in the chat, there's a link to our YouTube channel. We're trying to get a couple dozen more subscribers there, just a shameless plug, so that we can get our own custom URL, so you don't get this ugly random combination of letters and numbers at the end of our URL. So anybody that's not familiar with our YouTube channel, go check that out. This meeting as well will eventually be edited and posted on the YouTube to share publicly. So
that's great to know. Thank you for sharing that. I totally wasn't aware. I've now subscribed. That's good to know. Thank you.
Fantastic. So yeah, I had a couple questions here that we set up to ask you. So in terms of your website, I know that you mentioned right now you're kind of focusing on the blog section. Is that long-term plans? Is there anything new, anything that you hope to do? Any more guides or tools that you might be working on in the near future?
I don't think I haven't got any plans for any more guides in the short term. I think ran through most of these already, but yeah, I think, to be honest, the blog is where I'm really excited to do more, because there are so many amazing collections out there and growers with really interesting stories, and lots of expertise to share, which I'd love to give them the opportunity to do that. I really enjoy writing the blog, so I think that's probably what I'm going to be focusing on for the future. That said, though, since I started my greenhouse a few years ago, I've got quite a significant collection of Nepenthes now. So I'm probably going to start doing a few more, maybe not species showcases, but certainly some hybrid showcases. Some of the plants that I've collected, just doing a feature on plants that I find interesting, and running through the various forms that I grow and sharing some photos from my own collection as well. So I'll probably do a bit more of that as well. Yeah.
And on that note, since you do have exposure to kind of an international community, have you noticed any differences in either the attitude towards carnivorous plants or methods of growing them in various parts of the world? I know that that's going to hinge largely on climate, but for example, just growing Sarracenias indoors versus in America, everybody, fly traps and Sarracenias, you got to put them outside. Anybody has any kind of question about how do I take care of my Sarracenia or fly trap, everybody is always throw it outside, never in a terrarium, throw it outside. But I watched some YouTube videos, and folks that are in a colder climate have to grow them in controlled environments. So kind of be American versus European or whatever. Have you noticed any attitude differences?
I think when it comes to Nepenthes, probably the one I noticed more is the difference between species collectors and hybrid collectors. I think, and this is purely like anecdotal, right? But here in the UK, and probably maybe in Europe as well to a degree, there seem to be more people focused on collecting species of Nepenthes. And there are plants here that will command a very, very high price. So like a seed-grown specimen of, Nepenthes raja or something, like everyone will go crazy for that here. And I know that that's true in the States to a degree as well, of course. But I think when it comes to the exotica plants, right? So the hybrids that they produce, as beautiful and stunning as they are, I think the prices that you see for relatively small plants in the States from exotica, perhaps there's not quite as much appetite for that over here yet. And everyone here goes nuts for exotica plants updates. Of course they do, and they produce some amazing hybrids, definitely. But yeah, I don't think the prices have been pushed quite so sky high yet, purely because over here there's more people who probably gear their collections more around species. Again, that's just based on chats I've had with other growers, but I'd say that, yeah, that's probably what I've noticed.
And there was a question in the chat about maybe a central database somewhere that exists for, you know, blogs such as yours. Do you know of anything where they're kind of cataloged or consolidated somewhere?
Well, you know what? Back in the day, the ICPS used to have, this is like proper 90s stuff. They had like a web ring, I think it was called, where like everyone who had a, you know, an old school GeoCities kind of blog about carnivorous plants would submit it to the ICPS web ring, and you could like cycle through all of the blogs on the web ring. I don't know if that still exists. I doubt it does. I'll be impressed if it does. Yeah, so many of them are not working anymore. I know, right? It's a bummer. A lot of them have gone offline, but I think it's something that, given how many more blogs there seem to be from societies and from private growers, some kind of, you know, directory for them would be great. I actually had, I don't think I still have it in this sort of beginner's guide. One of the questions, here we are. Yeah, see, I used to have a section here, my blog roll, where I'd like link to other websites, other blogs about carnivorous plants, but a few of them were defunct, so I decided to rework it, but I never got round to it again. So yeah, like Jan, you mentioned Nepenthes around the house. That's a fantastic old site, and lots of the other sites that it links to are dead. So I mean, I'd be really interested in creating that. I'd post it here as a start. So if anyone, you know, anyone who runs a blog about carnivorous plants, if you'd be happy for me to link to it, if you'd be interested in me linking to it, I'm totally happy to do that. I can stick it here or in the sidebar over here somewhere. I think that would be a really cool thing to have, because yeah, I'm a subscriber to plenty of them, and yeah, I think it's a real, like I said before, a real positive step for the community to see more people blogging about carnivorous plants.
I thought Gian was offering to help you with building this database. So she's a little bit biased because she does a bit of blogging herself for plants as well as for fish. So the secret is out. Too bad. So yeah, she is definitely cut from the same cloth as you.
Gian, I feel I should know this already, but which is your plant blog? I'd love to, if I don't read it already, maybe I do. Nepenthes Diary. Oh my god. Oh yeah, you put up a post about is it Lady Pauline Maxima Talangensis. I read that really recently. I think that's one. I hope that's right. I hope I've not just made that up and I've thought of a different site. Yes, that's it.
She's
okay,
nodding
cool.
yes. So yeah, you're safe. Good call.
Okay, good.
So I guess
okay.
that's kind of a good segue. Is there anything you know, our members and our folks can assist you or help you, or you know, any kind of content or anything we can do to help develop your website from across the pond?
Well, I mean, really kind of you to offer. I guess you know, if anyone has something that they would like to publish to a slightly larger audience, maybe, I mean, and they don't have a blog of their own, like I'm always happy to speak to people who are interested in putting a post up on the site, and yeah, like that's really cool. But yeah, also feedback on any of my tools, like if there's anything that you think could be better or that I've failed to update, like just drop me a line. Especially in times of COVID, I find it's really nice, really cool to know growers from all over the world. So yeah, I always like hearing from people who share the passion for the hobby. And to answer your question, Rutger, about starting a forum, I'll admit that's not something I've ever thought about. I think it would be cool though, because I do miss the old forums. Like there were so many, and sometimes you can find them in like web archives, you know, when there are like really interesting discussions about, you know, building like a one of the ones that I remember researching for quite a while was someone who was trying to grow Nepenthes villosa using a freezer adapted into a terrarium, and there was this brilliant thread all about how they engineered it and hooked it all up, and sadly the forum was kind of dying, so all the images were broken and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it would be even harder to find that now in a Facebook group, of course, but yeah, I think forums like that, they were a good thing. So maybe one day.
So I'm going to give a plug here to Gage. He's been awfully quiet and shy today. He normally has his camera on. We can see what he's working on in the background. But Gage also has been super active on social media, especially on Instagram, with some very, very cool little projects and stuff. And Gian and I have both been trying to recruit him to write articles and such, along with photos of these amazing little, I don't know, terrariums. I guess you can call them terrariums, vivariums, aquariums, all of the above. So
I'm still a little hazy on the terms like paludarium and riparium and things like that, but yeah, it's good fun. It's like making it's combining the science of growing them with the art of like I don't know, bonsai or things like that. Yeah.
very cool. All right, so I'm gonna scroll through the chat to see if there's anything we missed. If anybody has any questions or comments, you can unmute yourself or throw it in the chat box. Because if not, we're gonna segue into kind of the next thing I wanted to share. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, super grateful, Tom, for you being here. I don't. What time is it over there?
Right now here it's about 8 p.m.
Oh, that's not too bad. That's a good time.
No, that's all good. That's
especially
all good.
with a new baby and all. I know we were a little bit concerned doing this at the beginning of the year.
yeah. No, thankfully, the baby is doing really well, as is mum, my wife. 2 months old now. Already had a tour of the greenhouse, obviously. Yeah, but very well. And yeah, I just want to say again, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been lovely to answer questions from everyone, and yeah, hopefully I'll be able to speak to some of you guys, on Instagram or Facebook after this, because yeah, it'd be really cool to connect with some of you guys. So thank you.
What I want to do right now is the special announcement that I mentioned in our newsletter. If you're subscribed, is Maggie and I, actually there were a lot more people involved, but Maggie and I were secretly working on a little mini project for a couple years behind the scenes, and it was before Skippy even started. But we wanted to have a way to recognize some of the amazing people that contribute to the carnivorous plant hobby. And so on the heels of a big event we did a couple years ago, we came up with an award that we wanted to give. And we have decided to name that award after a local, I'll call him a hero. I consider him a giant in the hobby. The name should be familiar to most of you. So we went and presented the award to Leo Song last Saturday. Yeah, and so because of COVID, unfortunately, we were all masked up and we had to be outside. So the audio is not great. I couldn't utilize any of the mics that I had. So I did add caption subtitles to the little video recording we did, as we were able to hand this award to Leo. And for those of you that don't know, I think he's been involved with carnivorous plants since the 70s, maybe the 60s, I think. Maggie, you probably know better than me. But yeah, he's truly a legend. He's got plants named after him. And so what we did was we commissioned an artist to make a sculpture of the Sarracenia Leo Song. And that is what we will be issuing going forward on an annual basis. We want to recognize somebody that is doing all the things that we as a club are trying to do, some of the people that we look up to that are inspirational figures for us. And so anyway, without further ado, I am going to put this up on my screen, and let me do a couple things here. I'm going to share computer sound and optimize for video. So I'm going to turn this on, and hopefully, I mean, like I said, I apologize for the audio quality, but the closed captioning should work. So check it out. Hi everybody, this is John and the whole Skippy team. We're doing something a little bit special today. Today is March 7th, and what we're going to do is actually present an award. The idea for this came up a couple years ago. Maggie and I were brainstorming some stuff following an event we did, and we thought it would be nice to recognize one of the giants in our hobby. And if you are from Southern California, you've probably heard the name Leo Song. He was over at Cal State Fullerton for a long time, and he's been involved with carnivorous plants longer than I've been alive. So, you know, one of the things, or some of the attributes that we were looking for is somebody who's interested in expanding the hobby and sharing their knowledge, but also just very passionate about carnivorous plants. And in every way possible, Leo Song fits those criterias. And so what the Skippy team did was we came up with an annual award. We're going to name it after Leo Song, and every year we're going to recognize somebody in the hobby that shares some of those values with us. So I'm going to turn it over to Maggie, and yeah, she's known Leo much longer than I have, and he's been like a mentor to her. So I'm going to give her a chance to say a few words.
Well, I don't have a lot to say except just to thank Leo for the passion that you have given us, and it's because of you that Skippy actually exists. You really, really gave us, you infected us with your passion for these beautiful plants that we all love to grow and learn about. And I'm not sure if this is the last time I'll see you in person before I move to Texas. So I really feel like this is a really good opportunity for me to personally thank you for the way that you have taught us by the way that you are, by who you are. And so we really wanted to give you this award, and we wanted to have something that would kind of pass down to other people in the future. And we want to recognize people who turn in that passion, because we're about growing a hobby. Skippy's about growing a hobby. And so you really gave us that kind of that mission. So we want to give you this award today.
Thank you.
Drum roll.
Yeah, really highly honored. Leo, so thank you very much for being you, buddy. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm really honored about this. It's always been my mission to make sure that the interest in the plant doesn't go away. And when some of the modern techniques are coming out, like tissue culture, the big companies weren't interested. Barry Sheehy himself said, if it doesn't have a demand for more than 10,000 units per week, I'm not interested in it. So where did all the innovation then have to go to? The hobby.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have contributed more to the horticulture and tissue culture and artificial propagation of these plants than the commercial houses.
I believe it.
And, so our contribution to the hobby is essential. And people like us who always carry a plant.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have such a quick way to share stuff, you know, not only with PPN, but all the stuff that we do online and stuff like that. This knowledge is gotten out. And like how? Knowledge is not knowledge unless it is shared. So this is what I mean. I just wanted to be open. I don't keep any secret. If I don't, so sometimes, well, this is what went into that plant, and some people say, well, we keep that secret.
What do you mean?
Well, you know, all someone has to do is get a piece of the plant and sequence it. So no. So you really can't keep the stuff out. But I tell people how I did it. That way, if you go out, you might not get the same results as you want to know, but at least you know what goes into it, and you can attempt to keep it.
that's where I see the value in club culture, is just local enthusiasts sharing what, hey, this is what worked for me. And I know that I've run into you many times at various events and functions and stuff, and it was kind of, so always a little bit starstruck, like, oh, that's the Leo guy. But you know, and he's always, you know, you're always talking to kind of the big wigs and stuff, so I was always a little bit intimidated, a little bit shy, but I've come to realize how personable you are, and how much interest you have in bringing new people in, and that's everything that we wanted to embody in presenting an award like this. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah, very good. Very cool. So yeah, just want to kind of recognize Leo. He's in our meetings most of the time, but I don't see him here today. But you know, getting to know Leo over the years, you know, he's just such an amazing person, such a powerhouse of knowledge, and you know, he just loves sharing his enthusiasm. And so, you know, that's who we are trying to be as a club. And so, you know, unfortunately, COVID is kind of limiting some of the activities we wanted to do. That includes hanging out with Leo, but it looks like we may be on the other side of that with all the vaccinations coming out.